these pieces, I'm going to be showing you pieces that when you go to the Museum of Modern Art, even though they rotate, they're the kind of pieces that you're going to see in museums more than you see them in people's houses. But you have to know they exist. And you'll see them up in auctions, galleries. So this Miss Blanche, a transparent lucite with suspended roses in it. And this, doing the shape of a traditional easy chair in steel mesh. And Shiro Kurumada, as you see by the name, is a Japanese designer. Tom Dixon is one of a group of English designers who were exploring industrial materials and sometimes industrial forms, and way back. And these chairs both were, this one, I think the S chair was made in regular quantity. Some of these started being made in limited editions. And they weren't looking to necessarily design the most comfortable piece of furniture, so much as playing around with designing furniture out of unconventional materials. At the same time, minimalist sculpture by people like Donald Judd, this is a sculpture that is slabs coming out of the wall, because I see it doesn't read properly. He designed some pieces of furniture like this. If you are interested in this, it doesn't matter like or not like, there is something called the Judd Foundation, which opened this summer, and that is Judd's former studio and residence. He's dead now. He died a few years ago. No, I think he died in the 90s. You would know. You know, Tom? I think it was the studio has been redone. It's a foundation that's open to the public. You can make a reservation to take a tour there. It's on Spring and Mercer Streets, and it's juddfoundation.com. It's online. It was fascinating because it has his furniture, it has some Alvar Aalto furniture. It was kept as it was when he lived there with his family, and some terrific, very contemporary artwork. He traded artwork. The artists of this time, the 60s and 70s, he would trade, you know, a piece of his sculpture for a piece of John Chamberlain's sculpture or a piece of Frank Stella artwork. So it was fascinating to go there. Anyway, I couldn't show you everything that was happening in the 20th and 21st century, and I decided you have to be aware of the movement for museum architecture as making a statement. The idea of a museum as putting not just the facility, but sometimes putting the city on the map. And this really started at the end of the 20th century. With things like this early one, now I.M. Pei, I think I showed you the east wing of the National Gallery, which was very dramatic, but I'm showing you things that were more drastic. When he was asked to do an expansion of the Louvre Museum in Paris. As you can see here, if you don't remember, the Louvre is it started out as a Baroque structure, and everything that was, the extensions were pretty much in the same vein. They wanted to have a better facility for bringing visitors in, thousands and thousands a year, and to have reception area to guide them to all the galleries. His idea was not to play around with the same style. So he built, as you see, a totally different structure, which a lot of people hated. It looks fabulous at night. It looks a little bit weird going in there, except that it's so right for what they needed. It lets light, have you been there?
Yeah.
Okay, it lets light down into the building. It's a very welcoming approach. So you go into, instead of going underground, you go into at night, but it's not open all night. So you go into light, and then there are passageways very clearly marked, to go to this wing, to go to that wing, to go to the third wing. There are shops and galleries downstairs. So it's a really workable situation. So it is both attention-getting and practical. Renzo Piano is the architect, the go-to architect for museum architecture. He has probably done more museums than any architect, I think. I haven't added them up. He is also known for being brilliant at meeting the needs of the art collection. There are two things, and this is a little bit of a lecture. But with any design, you think of what? Its form or function. You think of, okay, do you want to make a statement? And this goes for interiors too. Or do you want to serve the needs of what is going to go into the space? Or do you want to do both? Some of the new museums can be criticized as being more about the architecture than the artwork. Some of the older ones can be criticized as being fine for the artwork, but they're ugly to look at. And others, ideally, can be the best of both. The Mendiam collection, his first and one of his most famous museums, all the way back in 1986, was celebrated for being so congenial to the architecture because with this system of louvers, he brought natural light into the building. So that in a place where it had a good possibility for natural light, where you could get it lighting the artworks without casting the light directly on the artworks, which would damage them. And I'll show you another one of his later. But also, a student, I couldn't remember who was doing the New Whitney. Downtown, Renzo Piano is doing the New Whitney Museum, which is going to be built downtown really in the meatpacking district, near the High Line, which will open up in 2015. So they chose him not just to make an architectural statement, but to make it an effective museum because the Whitney Uptown was a challenge because it was architecturally disjunctive to the space it was in. This is the museum that started what has been called the Bilbao effect, which is museum as attention getter to put someplace on the map. Bilbao was a little industrial town. Apparently nobody knew it, nobody cared about it, and the city fathers decided they wanted to make it into something that would be a tourist destination. It was enormously, so once the Guggenheim selected it as a site, this was the architect chosen to do what is clearly a Gehry building. Gehry, if you notice, changed from deconstructivist to an organic, biomorphic, organic or biomorphic. Either one of them are like amoeba naturalistic shapes. And using what titanium cladding, which he's taken to, and also using a design that you could not have done before the computer. You could have done his deconstructivist design. Now he works, and he himself doesn't operate the computer. He starts with, he works with clay, and then he works with cardboard boxes. He puts them together and gets the form of the spaces he wants. And then his assistants, who know how to work with CAD and similar programs, structure a form around it, but the achievement that you can do, and you have to understand, I don't work with CAD, but what you can do with computer design is figure out a shape that is actually possible to construct. If I just drew this, if you drew this in 2 dimensions, the engineering firm would have no way of knowing that this could actually happen. This makes it possible for them to do a 3-dimensional form from which it's possible to build a site. This is what the interiors look like. Where this is criticized, but you see, Bilbao didn't have a collection to start with. They wanted a museum that was a statement. He wasn't designing it around the collections. When they acquired artwork, they commissioned some artwork to suit the space. You couldn't just put any old thing here. So they did things that would work with this. It is criticized as being, as I said, outweighing the artworks, which it certainly does, but it functions on another level. It has been successful in everybody who never heard of Bilbao before. Everybody heard of Bilbao. The museum was probably the most famous museum in terms of the recognizable form. Probably the most famous one in the world. Not by its name, but you know what I mean? Practically anyone would recognize it. And the other, so anyway, it generated what I was going to finish saying. It generated the Bilbao effect, which is any city or municipality, or the city, which wanted more people to notice it, or a museum. They thought, okay, you hire a big name architect and you have to do something dramatic and everybody will know we're here. And it has worked for a good many spaces. Some of it totally effective for the artwork, not all of it. The other famous museum done at the same time was Richard Meyer's Getty Center in California. Different kind of approach. It is not stark white as many of Richard Meyer's buildings are. Most of his buildings are. He tempered it down to mostly a travertine, sort of off-white and pale beige, because it was glaring in the California sunlight. This is like a village of buildings. This is the lobby. You can't go up, it's on the top of a hill. Let's say down here is one of the freeways. You see it from the freeway. You go to the parking lot and a tram takes you up to the entrance. And this is the main lobby you go into, which looks like a lot of Richard Meyer architecture. What's interesting about it is there are really fairly conventional galleries inside. So that when you're inside, you're not thinking about the architecture. You're thinking about each building, and you leave the building, let's say you leave the building that's, I don't know, up to the 16th century, and you go outdoors, not for a long space, but you go outside and you get light and space, and you can look around the landscape, and then you go into the next building. So that's how he's divided the areas. This was another big, major attention-getting, partly because of the money spent on it. The Getty still is the best funded museum of any museum, probably in the world, I would imagine. The Getty's the only museum that can, when something comes up at auction, the Getty will be the only museum that can afford to buy it without going around and raising money for it. A third museum built, not